Hip pain. My long-time nemesis. I've had right hip pain on and off probably since day, I want to say 100, 150, something like that, of this squat everyday journey that I've been on. I've always been the opinion of it's not, hard tissue. I always felt like it was soft tissue related. It wasn't a bony, obstruction or impingement or something like that. I always felt it was a muscular imbalance. Always. Because I could reproduce the pain. I could get the pain a little bit better when I changed exercises. This is basically the whole reason why I run around the freaking bush here, trying all these different exercises, trying combinations. The whole journey has been about how to progress, how to identify what structure is at fault for the hip pain. That's kind of where all of this started, this searching. Initially, when I started the program, it was like, no, I'm going to work up to a single training max, and then back off, do some doubles and triples, and that's it. I really wanted to just focus on squatting in that way, like the Bulgarian kind of esque type of approach. But then the hip pain started. In the last 2 or 3 days, maybe 4 days since I've started doing this business with the wide stance squats, I haven't had any hip pain. No, I haven't had any hip pain for a little while now, but maybe for like 2-3 weeks. Basically, the hip pain would come when I would do a lot of squatting. And when I say squatting, I'm talking about my normal squatting, my narrow stance, high bar, ATG squatting. Say I'll do a 5x5 at, 80%. I would get hip pain. If I just only did that, I would get hip pain. But if I was to mix up some pulling, RDLs, block pulls, normal deadlifts, any sort of pulling, I identified that was the antidote to the pain. So then for the longest time, I've always had that approach about the hip pain. Okay, I really want to get good at squatting. I know I need to do a lot of squatting, but I can't just do squatting. I need to do other things to maintain the squatting, to make sure the hip pain doesn't come back. What causes that? It's kind of been bouncing around in my head for some time. For the longest time, I thought it was a TFL thing. I had lack of internal hip rotation. That didn't quite make sense to me. It kind of puzzled me over and over again because ATG squatting, the bottom portion is freaking, all going all the way down, requires a lot of hip internal rotation. So I'm not leaving anything out when I'm going full range of motion. But the pain would manifest itself over the TFL, the tensor fascia lata, like the thing that, is a little kind of pocket muscle, right, kind of anterior hip. Its tendon is the iliotibial band, goes to the knee. Sometimes I would get radiation down my quad all the way down to my knee. It would get better when I would massage the area. And then there was this incident at work. I've mentioned this story a few times where I was at work standing around talking to my colleagues, and I leaned against a kind of oddly kind of tall desk. And the way I kind of leaned on it, I put a lot of pressure kind of in that glute, hamstring, adductor tying. And I leaned on it one day and I was like, oh my Lord. Like it was like a dagger stabbing me in the TFL. But the origin was at the back of me, somewhere in the hamstring glute area. And then that kind of like, initiated the thinking of maybe this is originating somewhere else. Maybe it's referred pain. Started stretching, started massaging, and I worked out that it was somewhere around the glute, adductor, hamstring tying. Initially, I thought it was like a proximal hamstring tendinopathy type thing. The tendon was really angry. And then I started thinking it was the adductor. But because the areas are so weird, it's really, really hard to palpate which structure it is, I kind of, couldn't really 100% work it out. But these last 4 days with the wide stance squatting and the annihilation that I've caused my adductors, my hips have been feeling like butter. Smooth as anything. What's causing that? I'm not entirely sure. But my gut feeling is it's adductor related. Now, it could be hamstring, it could be glutes, it could be any of these, because the plane of motion changes when you are doing a wide stance squat and everything changes, all the forces change. But the one thing that maximally changes is the adductors, hence the soreness. Yes, the glutes get hit from a different direction, but the glutes work really heavily in an ATG narrow stance as well. Everything I do is narrow stance for the most part. My serious lifts are always narrow. Now I've gone wide, and the big exposure that I've caused is of the adductors. So my gut feeling is it's the adductors. Then I start thinking about Louis and think about all the people that I've kind of listened to. Weak hips. Weak hips. Of course you can have weak hips if you've never trained wide stance. When I have connections like this in my mind where I'm like, wow, this thing could be preventing pain, do I have motivation for something like that or not? It is endless. Endless. Because after all, we just want to feel good. After all, nobody wants to be in agony and pain living like that. You want to be in absolute comfort. I wish I could do 10 sets of 10 of squats, like absolutely go bonkers on squats and not have to worry about pain the following couple of days because the hip pain is coming back. I've done way too much pushing, not enough pulling for the lower body. Imagine if I could just wide stand squat, and that could be my laser beam sniper focus straight into that cause. Not just generally think, oh, it's the pulling. Maybe it's the adductor. Maybe it's the adductor. My hips feel amazing. So that's another little layer, another little element to all of this. The bodies are weird, really, really weird. And it's really hard to find out what's going on. I remember a time, I don't know if you guys remember, when I got, I got inspired by Louis Simmons talking about wide stance, let's say conventional deadlifts. I don't know what that means. Basically, what I was doing is wide stance sumo deadlifts, but they were like stiff-legged, right? So no vertical torso. It was very much bent over torso, wide stance. That also hit around the same ballpark. Initially when I started that, it was reproducing the pain in my hip. But then when I started doing sets and sets and sets, I felt that area strengthen. And it was kind of like, how do I explain it? It's right next to the butt, but inside. It's kind of like the back side of your groin. So it's kind of like in between somewhere the tendons of the hamstrings and the adductors, that little area there. If you were to sit on a bench, not properly, but kind of long ways, the edge of the bench would be digging right in there. So it's kind of like the adductor, I feel. Now, these adductors have been putting up with a lot of range of motion for a long time, but never really had any length to it, like wide stance. So now I'm doing them, and I'm like feeling them like crazy, absolutely like crazy. When I'm doing these wide stance squats, all I'm thinking is, my Lord, my adductors are copping it. And I feel like when I hit the bottom, or the freaking parallel, right? It's not really the bottom for me right now. I literally feel like the thing that's preventing me from going any further is the adductors. They just run out of space. I don't think it's like a bone to bone. You hit a wall and you have to stop. I think it's just the adductors. You run out of space and you got to go back up. Is it really good to go ATG in a wide stance squat? I really don't think that is a good idea. I recall Pavel Tsatsouline talking about this at length, about what really causes hip, degeneration, talking about powerlifters, bodybuilders, all that sort of stuff. It's that really, really wide hip or wide stance squatting that really smashes the hell out of the hips. If you're really trying to go to depth. So a lot of people in powerlifting, especially in the geared, they will go super wide. Like we're talking like freaking doing splits. And then you load the hips and then you have to externally rotate those hips. It's just a lot of torque going through that joint. So I'm not talking about that type of squatting. But somewhere, sumo, not sumo, somewhere kind of wide stance, I guess you can call it sumo, is beneficial. This is where like geared lifting is really weird because the strength curve of the whole lift is not linear. You know what I mean? Like at the bottom, like you're on a trampoline. At the top, then you have to catch it and push out with your quads and whatever. So like this is on the back of my mind as well. Like hip health. However, at this puny weight that I'm dealing with in terms of my 1 rep max, when I compare it, it's feeling incredible. It's feeling really incredible. It's also like weirdly. Like I feel my lower abs engaged like crazy. It's just a lot of things are happening in this stance that I'm unfamiliar with. My adductors are really kind of screaming, and my abs are really contracting as well. I feel like there's a lot more pressure on my lower back. Once again, it's probably the musculature, the movement pattern is foreign to me, and I don't really know how to deal with it at the moment. But yeah, so I was able to put in a bit of work this morning. I ended up doing 5 sets of 10 with the 100 kilos. Really happy with that. I woke up this morning feeling not 100%. I still felt my adductors, but you know, when I did the 5 sets of 20 bodyweight squats, it loosened me up a little bit, and I was happy to get through the work. So hopefully I don't get the same pain that I did over the weekend. Hopefully now I can you know, put a little bit more frequency into it, and maybe I've kind of gotten over the worst soreness. But let's see how I pull up tomorrow. All right, guys, I gotta get off to work. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.